I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the well-run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders, pushing up just like these boulders. See conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers could give up.
Politics and sinners, they all the same. Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up, won't play the role. Gotta do what's best for my soul. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And you already know how I do this independent music. And this morning I got Twin pull up. And we'll be right back right after this.
I'm reminiscing on the things that we used to do. A few times got way sneaking me through, and I learned you and I got history, that's all we need. 3 turns up of love, don't keep me waiting. Just like with me, why you say you got a man, don't play with me. We ain't telling the truth, give me my truth, girl. Just tell me why, you know I'm gon' recognize. You've been rolling the dice. It's exhausting when you hold up, no love, no surprise. Baby, can you hold it down? That's why. So now who's taking your time? Hold up, no love, no surprise. Reminiscing the things that we used to say. Won't fight and we get stuck in our ways. I never learned. You and I got history, that's all we need. 2 tons of pull up, don't keep me waiting. Just stay with me. Why you say you got a man, don't play with me. If we ain't telling the truth, give me my true side. Girl, just tell me why. Know I'm gonna recognize you've been rolling the dice. It's exhausting when you no love, no surprise. So baby, can you hold it down? That's why. So now who's taking your time? No love, no surprise. Baby, won't you pull up on me? Ooh, won't you pull up on me? Now baby, won't you pull up on me? Ooh, won't you pull up on me? You and I got it, that's how we need. 2 turns that I put up, don't keep. Pull up, no love, no surprise. Baby, can you hold it down? That's why. So now who's taking your time? Pull up, no love, no surprise.
That was Twin with pull up. I found them on TikTok this weekend. I thought that was pretty interesting. And thought that was a really good song. I want to first today get into happy Monday, happy 420. And really, before I get into all that, I want to talk about. Actually, you know what? I'll keep that for the end. But again, happy 420. And first, I want to get into homeowner questions legitimacy of businesses at suburban homes with flashy cars and no business. So here is Liz Collin, and let's get into that.
In reality, it looks like a neighborhood, but on paper, it looks like a business district. How more than a few red flags led one Minnesota homeowner to start asking questions and uncover some shocking answers. Next. For safety reasons, we're going to be calling our guest Rick. I think you will understand why here in just a moment. But Rick, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Now, for a while now, you've had some suspicions about what's going on in your neighborhood in Savage. But let's start with what made you concerned and when?
Okay, so the when was, it's probably been 2 or 3 years, and there's one home that stands out specifically, and they've always had a unique collection of high-end cars. That's what kind of brought my attention to that home, and then kind of watching, some of the Nick Shirley stuff, and some of the stuff was kind of correlating with what he was saying. It kind of got my suspicions up. Like, first of all, it was, boy, that's a nice collection of cars. It's pretty impressive. And then I kind of started kind of piecing together some of the things that he was saying that kind of correlated to what I was kind of starting to believe.
I know some of those pieces include being traced to Somali families in your neighborhood, and you started looking around online, and that's where you found these transportation service companies, food prep companies, an adult home care center as well, basically outside your own backyard in the middle of a suburban neighborhood.
Correct.
But making things even more concerning, there doesn't seem to be much activity going on at these homes. What can you tell us about that and what you found online?
Yeah, so like you said, there's about 8 homes, Somalian homes, that are all within a 2-block radius. 4 of them are all side by side. And so after seeing the cars, I kind of did some research and Google search, like who lives in this home. And then I started looking at the other homes as well. And their names came up, and then along with their address, obviously, and then it showed the registered businesses that they owned that were assigned to that address. So all of them, like you said, were either non-emergency transportation service or in-home adult care or the food preparation. And a couple of them immediately showed links to Feeding Our Future as far as the food preparation and food services. So that kind of just had me like, wow, this is all like right here in this neighborhood. And then as far as like the non-emergency transportation, none of the vehicles were leaving. They had consistently all small minivans, and some of them had like little decals on the side with the name of the business and then the phone number. But even like in the wintertime, and Nick Shirley kind of pointed these out, that it would snow, and it would snow on the vehicle and then all around the vehicle, and the snow never got cleared off. It would just sit there until it melted. So there was 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time that the snow would just sit on the car. So it just showed that these vehicles were not moving anymore.
So one of the homes in your neighborhood is owned by Abdiaziz Farah. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison last August for bribing a juror in the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scandal. What have you noticed about that specific property?
So I didn't know that he actually lived in this neighborhood until I had been driving by, and I had noticed that there was, and I later learned the FBI had done its 3rd raid there. I did a search on the address, and it showed that they still have a food service that Abdi had started out during the Feeding Our Future that was linked to that and is still an active business out of that address.
As you mentioned, Rick, along with that property, you discovered that several homes in the neighborhood, they're tied to these medical transportation companies. And we followed up on your tips, did some research as well. One transportation company with ties there says it's logged millions of miles, and you called them and actually asked to schedule a ride. What happened?
I did. So kind of curiosity killed the cat. So the the phone number was on a decal on the side of the van. So I called it and somebody answered, and I asked if I could schedule a ride to a doctor's appointment. And immediately they're like, nope, we're all booked up. And I'm like, well, I didn't even give you the date and the time yet. And she says, we're booked up, and then hung up on me. And the van's sitting right there. And she didn't know the date or the time that I wanted to go to this appointment.
You also noticed something strange going on in your neighborhood during Operation Metro Surge when thousands of ICE agents conducted federal law enforcement in Minnesota. What can you tell us about what was happening where you live?
So that one home in particular that I had mentioned, all those exotic cars or the high-end vehicles, right when that Operation Surge started in Minneapolis, they all just vanished. They disappeared. And about a month and a half later, when they started announcing that they're going to withdraw out of Minneapolis, they all magically reappeared again.
So like others who have noticed what's been going on and speaking out about it, I know you filed reports with the state and federal government about what you've noticed, what you've uncovered. Have they responded? And if so, what'd they say?
So it was right before the end of last year. I had enough, so I'm like, I kind of want to at least report some of this stuff, whether I know for a fact that this is all going on. So I reached out to a handful of government agencies, and one ended up calling me back about a month later. I kind of had lost hope, but they reached out to me with the Department of Human Services, and they gave me an email. So I wrote a lengthy email of the addresses, the names of the people, and the names of the businesses that I had in question. Like I said, there was 8 of them, and kind of been corresponding back and forth over the last 4 to 5 months. And at the end of our conversation, it sounded like they were going to start going to some of these addresses, but she said it's going to be a little while because there was 5,000 of them that they were having to go through.
So what's going through your mind when you hear that 5,000 addresses in Minnesota that they're looking into?
It really does blow my mind. Not only that this has happened, but it's almost as mind blowing that it continues to happen even to this date. That, in my opinion, it's kind of blatant, like to have these vehicles and live this lifestyle. It's mind blowing that this is possibly still going on.
Yeah. So as a homeowner, as a taxpayer in Minnesota, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, frustrated beyond belief. I guess I'm trying to do as much as I can within reason, calling you and calling different government agencies, and just hope that maybe something will stick, and if we can keep shedding light on this, maybe it'll stay on the front burner and things will happen.
That is the hope. Appreciate you talking about this so much, Rick. Please know that so many, we have heard from so many, I should say, across the state, very similar concerns happening right in their neighborhoods. And I'm sure you'll help inspire others to do the same and do some of this work for themselves as well. But thank you for being here, and thank you for speaking up.
Absolutely.
That's fucked up to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we literally need it. We're like our people now. And yet this is continually been going on for years. And nobody really speaks out about it. They talk about Alpha News. Liz Collins does, AJ Legault, Lou Goose. But the people that, especially when it came to like Black reporters, we have Georgia Ford, we got Listen Up Media. They don't talk about this shit. And I understand why Georgia doesn't talk about it. It's because her husband's boxing gyms was connected. I'm not saying that they had any involvement, but his boxing gym was used as a feeding site. That's not shocking news. If people were informed, they would have seen that. And that's what's like really crazy to me, because I even want to rewind the tape a little bit today. You know what I'm saying? I want to go back all the way back. This is 2001. 2001. This is when we had a different mayor in Minneapolis, Cher Sales Belton, I think her name was. And there was a lot of shit going on. And still today, this same shit, that hasn't stopped. It's only gotten worse in Minnesota. And especially in Minneapolis when it comes to the Twin Cities and the 7 biggest counties. So that the Twin Cities, you have Ramsey, you got Hennepin, you got Dakota, Washington, Anoka, Scott, I think it's Scott County. But there's like 10. I know I just put up 5, but I think there's 10 counties that they consider, like, those 10 counties in the Twin Cities have as much people as the rest of Minnesota. So when we talk about a statewide race, I really do feel like there's certain people that can't go inside to that's why the DFL, and that's why I won't even really call it the DFL anymore, because it's the DSA. And it's the same shit. They say they want to eradicate, abolish fraud. But yet, you look at Jacob Frey, Feeding Our Future was all entwined into him. Same with Jamal Osman. The same thing with Omar Fattah, Ilhan Omar, Keith Ellison. And yet we're supposed to compromise with these people. We're supposed to make legislation. Like, well, not when people are being fraudulent. If people are being fraudulent and people are trying to wave that olive branch, you're not doing anything that we're supposed to be doing. That means you join their table. You're okay with the shit, because that's where the people get paid. And that's where I want to take this, right? Because all the way back in 2001, there was the Brian Herring scandal. And I know people don't really, because a lot of these lawmakers, a lot of these politicians aren't from Minnesota. So they don't remember. This is no matter if it comes to Jerry McAfee, no matter if it came to Spike Moss, Brian Herring. And I'm only saying Brian name because I shouldn't say that. But he's doing wrong, and it's been going wrong for a long time. The same thing with Marquise. The same thing with Nikema. But the same thing with Chantel. Us black people don't like to hear this shit. They don't like to hear that the leaders, that they so-called leaders, are fucking them over, are selling them out so they can get their reparations, so they can make that generational wealth, not so the whole community can prosper and make sure that we have generational wealth. No, they're not worried about us. They're not worried about the community. They're making sure that their family does. You think it's about, here's one thing that I will say, because I know this has been said plenty of times before me. I know it went viral in Chicago. You know, everybody says it takes a village. What if we have a bunch of retards running the village? Lisa Clemens, Stuttering Al Clemens, L Flowers. Like, come on. How is that? That's what I can. How is it so hard for people to see all these connections, and yet they still don't say nothing? Because this investigation into Brian Herring, and you will see sometime this week, or at least early next week, you'll see them answer. Because they have to, in that lawsuit that was filed April 6th, so they have 21 days to answer. 21 days. So in my book, that gave them to the 27th. So I would think it would either be this week or next week, early next week, that we would see an answer. And as discovery comes out, you could be able to go on to Minnesota court records, and you can see that. So I'm hoping that, I've been watching it. I have the lawsuit number, the criminal court number they have, whatever. So I will be watching that. But here I want to go into this interview. And the first couple of minutes are really shocking because there was a conversation that the mayor at that time had with Brian. And he only told her a little bit of the story, not the whole piece, just a little bit. And she goes on here and says that. And you other hear they saying the quiet part out loud. I will say that they're saying the quiet part out loud.
The story couldn't have been more shocking. Minneapolis City Council member Brian Herron got caught in an FBI sting extorting money from a South Minneapolis businessman. Herron's tearful apology and resignation was followed by the appointment of a Minneapolis lawyer to investigate the matter. Well, that attorney, Don Lewis, quit the job earlier this week after it was revealed he has supported Mayor Sharon Sayles Belton in her tight race to win re-election. Are you following all this? It's a little confusing. With us to answer questions tonight about the case, Minneapolis Mayor Sharon Sayles Belton. Welcome to Almanac. As always, good to see you.
It's good to be here.
Well, now, when you were talking about the Brian Herron case, you had said you felt at the time that it was a lapse in judgment. And I'm wondering, it appears to have been, though, really a long-term situation with Mr. Herron. Did you think you underestimated the seriousness of the situation by saying he had a lapse in judgment?
No, my statement about a lapse in judgment had everything to do with what Brian told me. And Brian did not tell me all of the facts about his involvement. He talked about a small piece of what we then learned to be was a pattern of having taken money from Minneapolis businessmen. So when I heard the story unfold on the 6 o'clock news that night, I was flabbergasted, even more so than I was with Brian's first revelation of his involvement in this crime.
You didn't get any sniff of this coming down the pike at all?
Not at all, not at all. I mean, I learned that day from Brian, and it was only after a series of questions that I asked him about why he was so upset. He was in my office totally and completely distraught. So my comments about lapse of judgment were made on the basis of what Brian had said to me about a single event of which he had expressed great remorse for. But then that night on the news, I found out that it wasn't just what the FBI was investigating from 1998 forward, but Brian had in fact committed these acts of extortion dating back to 1996. It was devastating for me to learn and understand on the news that night just how serious and how egregious his conduct was. And I said that the next day.
Mayor, initially you called for an internal investigation. Now knowing what you know and it now eventually becoming an external investigation, do you wish in hindsight it had immediately become an internal investigation and called for that instead?
Actually, what I said at the first press conference where we shared with the public what we knew, I said we were starting with an internal review. I also shared with the media that I was going to be meeting later that day with the U.S. Attorney. And then after my conversation with the U.S. Attorney, we would determine what our next steps would be. That conversation took place as I reported, and then the very next day we announced that we were going to move to an outside investigation. So I actually did what I said I was going to do.
And that investigation has become difficult, Don Lewis having to step down, and now we don't know where it's going to go. Where do you think it's going to go next? Have you been surprised by these daily developments?
Well, I think it's real clear where it's going now. Everybody agrees that there should be an independent external investigation. And Jay Heffron, much like he did previously, will make the decision about who is going to conduct that external investigation for the city. And I'm sure Mr. Heffron right now is trying to think about what lawyer, what law firm in the state of Minnesota outside of the 7-county metro area is going to conduct that investigation.
Are you going to have a say in that, by the way, because this is a politically charged issue now?
Again, I didn't have a say in it before, and I still don't have a say in it now. We set up a process in the city of Minneapolis to, again, distance elected officials from making decisions about who was going to do investigations or who was going to get the work that outside counsel gets in the city of Minneapolis when we do not have the expertise. We set up a set of criteria, and then we also on the advice of the city attorney, approved a panel of lawyers that the attorney generally would go to get this outside expertise. That's how Mr. Lewis was selected, and that's how this new investigator will be selected as well. Arm's length from elected officials. The only reason why the link took place was because, at least in my opinion, when people understood that it was Don Lewis, they immediately wanted to know whether or not he had involvement with the mayor and if the mayor was involved in the discussion or his selection. Neither of those things took place. I wasn't involved, and Jay Heffern, quite frankly, didn't use this time or even in the past politics and who people support now or in past days as a criteria for who should do this work.
But you have to admit that politics is inevitably happening in all of this. There's a mayor's race going on in all of this. Some people are saying, this is on your watch. This happened.
Well, again, I'm not responsible for Brian Herron's conduct and behavior. He's an adult, and he made the decisions to violate the law and to violate the public's trust. And Brian Herron has admitted his guilt to the U.S. Attorney and to the public, and will be held accountable for his conduct and behavior. And so Brian has to assume responsibility for his behavior. And as the mayor, I cannot assume responsibility for Brian Herron's behavior.
If the evidence continues to grow, and if this expands, what is then your responsibility as mayor?
Again, one of the things that I wanted to do first is to acknowledge the fact that the documents from the U.S. Attorney suggested that there may be involvement on the part of a city employee in this action. And that's why we wanted to immediately begin an internal review, an internal investigation, have a conversation one-on-one with the U.S. Attorney, and then determine whether or not we should do something different. We also wanted to make sure that nothing we were doing would interfere with the federal investigation. And the U.S. Attorney walked away from the meeting telling me, number one, Mayor, I can't tell you anything. And number two, if you get too close to my investigation, I'll let you know. And number three, you certainly need to do what you think is the right thing to do. And I thought the right thing to do was to follow up on the information that we read in the U.S. Attorney's document that suggested that a city employee might be involved.
How about inspections? Can you guarantee that you know how deep this has gone and that there's no corruption or further problems in department that does inspections?
I really won't know that. And one of the things that we hope that, again, the outside counsel will do, will review all the documents and material. I'm not a lawyer, so maybe they'll see some things that I didn't see, although I do have a pretty sharp eye. And then look at our practices, our policies and procedures, all of our records, determine the scope for their investigation and do the work. And we're going to let that investigator determine the scope and the amount of time that it's going to take to do a thorough job. My obligation, which is what you raised before, is to make sure that people have confidence in city government, that the integrity of the organization is not in jeopardy. And I will work long and hard to make sure that that takes place. I made the right decision to have an independent investigator, and we are going to have an independent investigation, and we will get to the bottom of this.
We'll have you back on when it's all over with.
Yeah, I'll be glad to come and give a report.
All right. Thanks.
And a quick note to Twin Cities viewers, on Wednesday, August 15th, we're lining up a debate with the leading candidates for mayor.
I just want people to know this was all the way like late 1990s to my understanding that the investigation, they had Brian way before this other shit, because they had taps, they had wiretaps, they had other information. And it's really crazy to me is that they still today, the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota deals with that. Like, how can we as taxpayers or as voters trust in this? Like, how can we trust? That's why I always thought it was weird at Zion Baptist Church, right? I did think that was weird, all the shit that was going on, the shit that was coming out in investigations. And then you had people that were being fucked over in those situations coming out. and being told, hey, listen, man, I was fucked over. I was fucked over by Marquise, or I was fucked over by Brian Heron. You had people out here that literally, and no, maybe not. A lot of people chose not to talk about it. But I will say this is that we need to hold people accountable. We knew shit was going on in our community, and instead of trying to hold people accountable because we thought it was, I'll say this: a lot of people think it's not their job. It is. It is our jobs. I don't care if you're a cashier at Cub Foods, Walgreens, if you work at a hotel, convenience store. You don't have to be law enforcement. You don't have to be an attorney. But it is your duty, if you see this shit, to see something, say something. It should be, instead of people being called, oh, you a snitch. This one thing I want really people to understand, right? If you don't have any involvement in the street life, and you're just an everyday civilian, citizen, going upon your business, and you see something and you say, you're not a snitch. You're not a snitch. I don't know why we say that shit. I don't know why. And then we try to compare those type of situations to shit that we don't really, at the end of the day, people try to make it corporate, or what do you mean corporate? Like, we have to really, there is no, in some areas, there isn't no, everybody wants to think there's a thin line. There isn't no line. There isn't. There isn't no imaginary. There isn't no boundary. We had for a very, very long time, it's so many people, even though it was wrong, they were doing it. They were doing it because others allowed it. They had enablers. They had people that would sweep it under the rug, instead of actually giving the community the truth, full transparency. We always like to, I won't say I like to, but the government, they always like to spin a narrative. They don't ever want to give the people the truth. Never. Because they want to spin a narrative. It's not the truth. That's why it's really crazy to me how I see a lot of things, like, especially like in Red Wing, like, how do y'all let this shit go on? You guys have, I'm starting to think a lot of people have amnesia, but then again, they weren't from around here. They weren't from around here. So how can you expect people to make the conditions better if they have never been in those type of conditions? If they weren't here, how do they know? How do they know how bad the 80s and 90s were? A lot of people want to compare. And to be honest, I sit back and I think about the 80s and the 90s in Minneapolis and how we used to go downtown, how I used to take the bus to Roller Garden, all the way out in St. Louis Park. They had a little dinosaur on top. They would change the colors every week. Went out to the mall of them. And that's what people, before the train ever came, to take the bus all the way from, I guess I'll just say downtown, to the mall of them, it took at least 45 minutes to an hour. Now it's about 15. Take the train. So people don't even understand that, like, y'all weren't even around here when we had to go through the long way to the motherfucking Mall of America. And now you look around, the malls that I used to go in as a teenager, like Brookdale, Burnsville, all those malls are getting basically not, they ain't become, look at if you look at the pictures of years ago of how Apache Mall used to look in Rochester, and then you look at it now, there's a big ass difference. The movie theater is gone. That used to be when you used to come out on the food court exit entrance, whatever, the little side into the food court, that's where you would go into the movie theater. It was right in that parking lot. There was that, I think it's Apache Theater or some shit. Like, motherfuckers don't even know, like, when we used to have not only just the Apache Theater, we had the one downtown in the Galleria. We had the Dollar Show out there by Silver Lake. And then we had another movie theater over by TJ Maxx. Like, man, that's how I know, like, a lot of these so-called lawmakers, politicians, they weren't around here back then. They weren't around here when they got to see certain strip malls like Miracle Mile, when Foot Locker used to be down there in Rochester. And Andy Smith wasn't here. Neither was Kim Hicks. Liz Bolden. Like, and that's the sad shit to me. Is like, and then I see why so much history is gone. Used to have the YMCA, which is now an apartment building. Used to have the Burger King that was down there. Used to have the Chinese restaurant used to be in there. Used to have housing, rooming houses, Maxwell House. Like, so much history is just gone. Like, poof, bam. And it hasn't happened overnight. It's been a matter of time, because now they're doing a DMC, the Destination Medical Center. So now when you get to see Rochester, you don't see the Rochester that made Rochester great. The reason why Rochester is great, you don't see that anymore. When you used to come into Rochester, the first thing that you would still see the Walmart, and I think that came in at like the early 2000s. Because when we first moved to Rochester, it wasn't really a lot. That Rochester could grow. It had the width, it had the area to grow, and Duluth and other places didn't. And Mayo Clinic, you don't hear them going bankrupt. You don't hear them having a financial crisis. They're blossoming. They had Minnesota in a chokehold and made Tim Walz fold. Made that nigga fold. And Mayo Clinic is the only hospital in Minnesota that has the benefits, the rights, the privileges that other hospitals don't, because it's Mayo Clinic. Because they're putting over $5 billion just from 2025 to 2030. They're putting $5 billion into Destination Medical Center. That's why they hold so much power. They hold so much, because money talks, bullshit walks. You don't see our lawmakers trying to get rid of NDAs and government. You don't. I don't see Democrats coming out and talking about that, because they're okay with that shit. They're okay with not being transparent with the community. They would rather it be an NDA and all that to hide as much as they can so they can live peacefully. Because they know if that shit get out, it would be no justice, no peace. They know that. Didn't matter if it comes to Pine Island, Cannon Falls. None of that matters. Why do you think that when they do these settlements with the families, when it comes to police brutality, and I'm not saying just even the others, not even when somebody dies, when they're killed. Ask them to talk about their situations, because they can't. There's an NDA attached to that. That's why you don't see George Floyd's family out here like that. They got justice, but there's so much bullshit that goes on in their brother's name that I would be pissed. I would be pissed. But instead, a lot of that shit, they did the same thing with Ben Crump. That's why, but it really, when I see Brian Herron, I see that as like an Al Sharpton. And the black community loves that shit. They love scammers. They love rats. That's the one thing that I really won't get is that the FBI had so much information that they flipped this nigga. They flipped him. And everybody knows if you've ever dealt with the feds, you know that no matter, they don't try to charge you unless they know they got your ass. Because that's why their conviction rate is like 90, I think it's like 97%. It's because when they take your ass to court, they want to make sure they got you. Look at Wyan Melly, almost 7 years. 7 years in a state jail, county jail, fighting a murder case. Do you think that's a democracy? Do you think that that's okay? That a person who has not been found guilty has been sentenced 7 years. 7. You look at me and tell me that that's okay. Because that's what's wrong with America. Because we feel like that's okay. No, that's not. If you're fighting your case, right, and they have to prove that you're guilty, and they haven't proved it, not by a reasonable doubt, and the nigga still sitting. That's wild as hell to me. I remember sitting in Olmsted County, and there would be dudes in there that were, I think the longest was probably like, I think there was like Jimmy in them, and that was like 2 years. I don't know how motherfuckers can do that, because there's a real big difference from doing jail time to doing prison time. There's a big fucking difference. Because in prison, you get your TV, you get radios, the canteen's bigger, your phone costs, they're cheaper, not by much, but it's cheaper. You got more shit for hygiene. You buy clothes, shoes, go outside in the yards. And it used to be something, but way back in the day, like when I was there in the late 90s, used to be able to barbecue. Yeah, motherfuckers can make pancakes and eggs and shit. Some hash browns from the potatoes. You could dice up some onions and green peppers. Because I used to get that shit to you. The onions, the potatoes, eggs, flour. That's a staple. So the prisons would have that in the kitchen units. If a motherfucker had been back in prison back in the 90s, and maybe even before me, because I know you could, before when I went to prison, you could still smoke. I was one of them getting it out. Like motherfuckers could literally go to the canteen and they would have cigarettes, packs of cigarettes, cartons. Yeah, shit was wild. And now it ain't nowhere like that. It ain't. I remember you used to be able to have people send you TVs. When your visitors used to come, they used to have the vending machines in the in the visiting rooms. And they ain't got none of that shit no more. I ain't been to prison since 2012, but shit's wild to me. But it hasn't changed. It's only progressed. It's only progressed. I look at it now of like when I was coming up, and I'm not saying that because my era, it was the crack era, it was America was fucked up. And now we really are fucked up when it comes to the fentanyl crisis, the fentanyl epidemic. Because to me, that's a weapon of mass destruction. And it should be. How many people have died from fentanyl? How many? More than crack ever took. Heroin? Meth? And now these niggas out here sprinkling in the weed and having the kids overdose. But yet people don't want to speak out until it hits your family. And then that's when people want to speak out. And that's crazy to me, man. But let's get into this fraud. And last week, they uncovered over $2 million in SNAP related fraud. SNAP is the food stamps. And you're going to see the feds come in here more just because of the SNAP. There's so much fraud in Minnesota that it's crazy. And the fact that we don't have more lawmakers that come out and want to get rid of this shit. Because it's like, how do you fund these programs with this shit still going on? I don't get that. I just really don't get that.
The latest accusation in Minnesota's fraud crisis. Federal investigators say they uncovered around $2 million tax dollars they believe were taken illegally in the Twin Cities. Ashley Grant is here to break down the role local businesses have played and what this new raid revealed. I can't believe there's another one.
Possibly, yeah, another one, Frank. And we know that this investigation started in February. They're calling it Operation Cold Snap. Federal investigators are trying to identify businesses who are taking advantage of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. About 440,000 low-income Minnesotans rely on those benefits for food. So how are criminals taking advantage of the system? Well, investigators call it SNAP trafficking.
They bring the card into the store, and instead of buying an eligible food item, which is what SNAP is for, they exchange the benefits of that card for cash, for money. And then the retailer will take that money on the card, spend it.
In the past, the USDA has said the cardholder usually ends up with less cash than the card is worth, benefiting the business. Again, the USDA Inspector General said they've uncovered about $2.1 million in suspected fraud in the Twin Cities. He said 20 stores are accused of administrative violations, not rising to the criminal level. But there are 2 stores where federal agents, including Homeland Security investigators, executed warrants. Now, take a look at these photos shared today showing stacks of cash and EBT cards inside an evidence bag. Benefits meant to feed people in need.
If the responsible adult, whether it be parent or guardian, are trafficking the funds, it's actually that child that's not going to that's going to suffer from it, because the food benefits will never reach that child.
Ashley, can you put this in context? I mean, like, how often does this happen, do they think?
Yeah, so we did look back at some data from the federal government showing about $1.2 billion in SNAP benefits were trafficked between 2015 and 2017. That's about 1.5% of the total cost of the program, which is around $100 billion. But today, the USDA Inspector General said reports show improper payments could be as high as 10%.
Wow. Percentage is not huge, but it's so vast.
It's a big amount of money.
Huge
right?
amount of money. So what are they doing with the money? Do we know what they use the cash for?
Yeah, so they haven't shared specifically with these cases, but the USDA did say in past investigations people have trafficked benefits for cash, guns, and drugs.
Wow. It's crazy to me how more people don't say something, because I thought it was see something, say something. But I guess y'all just want to be see no evil, speak no evil type of niggas I see. And that's crazy as hell to me. I was debating if I wanted to talk about this or not, because I don't know if I want to give him the satisfaction of even talking about him. But this is my thing that all I'm going to say about this, right? When it comes to people that want to protest or think that they're doing something that's right? They think that that's okay. I'll say it like this: we have way too many people that think that assaulting someone, that putting your hands on somebody is okay, and it's not. But why would this is the one thing why I don't counter protest anymore, and I won't. Because first of all, nigga put their hands on me, I'm going to jail. We're gonna fight. We're gonna do. Now, I'm not gonna call the police. I'm gonna put my hands on you. There ain't gonna be no, I'm gonna go on Fox News, I'm gonna go on this type of news and I'm gonna speak. No, fuck that. I don't care about none of that. What I care about is, why are y'all putting your hands on me? So what I don't see is, like, especially even in the Savannah Hernandez case, you had a lady that went down there by herself. You're going into where you know there's protesters at. It was a fuck ICE protest. So you already know there's going to be lunatics in there. So why would you go but just yourself? And if something happens, you can't protect yourself. And you want to make it where the police are going to try to come. Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. So why, even with Jake Lang, Zach X, my thing is like, why put yourself in the predicament where you're going to have to do self-defense at some point? And then it's not going to be looked at as self-defense. It's going to be looked at as an assault. It's going to be looked at as you're the bad guy, not them for the reaction that you give them, for the action that they took. So when you're going into Hennepin County, you're not going into Wright. You're not going into Freeborn, Fillmore. This is Hennepin County that is ran by socialists. And so even if you do protect yourselves, you're going to be the one that is at fault, not them. It don't matter about the feds, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that, right? Because I can tell you right now, Mary's not taking it serious. Neither is Dwana Witt. And Walter can talk about she was brutally assaulted. Come on, man, brutally. If that is not sensationalism, and I understand why he's doing these videos, it's because he's not in committees anymore. He got kicked off. So he's got to go make some money. And where is he going to make that money from? By doing these little ass videos. Because when I did watch this morning, it said in the beginning of it, paid advertisement. Oh shit. It's like, y'all niggas don't be doing shit. Only just for the money. You don't want change. You just want the change in your bank account. That's it. Because that's the only thing that ever changes. The bank accounts of these so-called pastors, so-called CEOs, these so-called people that work for nonprofits.
This is Savannah Hernandez, a Turning Point USA reporter right here in the Twin Cities outside the Whipple Federal Building. She was doing her job, filming and asking questions at an anti-ICE protest. For that, she was swarmed, horns blasted in her face, shoved to the ground by a grown man, and injured. The FBI has opened a federal investigation. 4 people were arrested. Her offense? Reporting on the wrong side of the narrative.
I'm terrified to do my job. I can't even interview people properly on the street because I got brutally assaulted and pushed to the ground by a 250-pound man for simply going and reporting on anti-ICE activities.
This isn't random street crime. This is the inversion of violence in real time. Conservative speech and journalism labeled as harm, while actual physical violence gets reframed as resistance, protest, and activism. Traditionally, violence meant something very simple. Physical force, harm, real harm, coercion, a punch, use of a weapon, destruction of property. But over the past decade, especially in academic and activist circles, that definition has expanded and even inverted. It's been flipped on its face. Now we're told that speech can be violence, that enforcing contracts can be violence, that disagreement itself, if it challenges someone's identity or worldview, is a form of assault. And once something is labeled as violence, it no longer needs to be debated, it needs to be stopped.
We don't want you to speak here. Your words are violence. They are threats. You cannot be speaking here. To drown you out, we're not here to listen to you. It's not worth it to converse with you. We do not want your ideas here.
The conversation that you're having is oppressive.
So I am oppressing people by what I'm doing. So I am exerting violence on people by my speech. That's what the sign says, and that's what you just said.
It contributes to
And the
racism.
protester is saying that's exactly what I'm doing, and she's saying that's exactly what her sign means. So that means that you, a faculty member at an American public university, paid for by taxpayer dollars, are conflating speech with violence.
Yes.
There are actual terms for this. One of them is structural violence, the idea that systems, even neutral ones, can produce unequal outcomes and are therefore inherently harmful. Another is epistemic violence, which basically means that certain ideas, ways of speaking, or even ways of knowing can invalidate someone's lived experience and therefore are considered a form of actual tangible harm.
Epistemic violence is when you reject different ways of knowing. You believe there is just one way of knowing, so you ridicule other ways of knowing, you suppress other ways of knowing, and you dismiss other ways of knowing. All of this is referred to as violence.
And this is where you get ridiculous claims like the idea that there's an ongoing genocide against trans people because most of us reject radical gender ideology. They're literally saying, in effect, if you don't agree with me and affirm me, it's the same thing as killing me. That's, of course, completely insane. It collapses the distinction between persuasion and force, between disagreement and coercion, between feeling harmed in your tummy and actually being physically attacked. And once that line collapses, you get a moral inversion. If speech is violence, then shutting it down becomes self-defense. If disagreement is harm, then intimidation becomes justified. That's how you end up in a world where a speaker coming to a college campus is treated like a threat, but the mob that shows up to shut that speaker down is treated like they're a bunch of victims.
So you've invited me to speak here, and I'm being heckled nonstop, and I'm just asking for an administrator to sign the
Your racism is showing.
Where a journalist gets assaulted, but the conversation becomes whether her reporting was harmful. Where billions of dollars in property damage are described as mostly peaceful because the underlying cause is considered morally justified. That's not just inconsistency, it's not just a double standard, it's a complete inversion of the moral framework where good becomes evil and evil becomes good. You've seen it. Speakers shouted down, events canceled because someone might be offended.
Erica Kirk canceled a planned appearance at today's event in Georgia after receiving what organizers called very serious threats. Erica Kirk is the widow, of course, of the late conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated last year at a Turning Point event in Utah.
Public officials describing eviction as violence while ignoring the rights of the people whose property is being taken without compensation.
Eviction is an act of violence, and we have to do everything to prevent it.
And again, the point here is not that every person on the left believes this. That would be a lazy way of thinking of it. The point is that this framework has gained real influence in institutions that shape our culture, universities, the media, nonprofits, and increasingly, your government.
Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist!" exclamation point. Catch! Exclamation point.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core. And shut down the city! We are at war!
We're at a war right now.
We are at war.
So you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
And that's why the gloves are off.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
And yes, there are many threats to democracy. We see it with these extreme candidates.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands.
What the American public want is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight.
You know, this is literally call to arms.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high.
No. With all due respect, if they go low, we don't go high.
When they go low, we kick them.
We take them to the mud and choke them out.
Yeah, I can't do that. So I wanna talk about this a little bit. This just happened this morning. I put this out here. And Dustin Grage said that Minnesota has an opportunity to actually elect a Republican statewide for the first time in over 2 decades. Michelle Tafoya can win. I only know Michelle Tafoya because of her sports reporting. Because of her sports reporting. That didn't make anybody's lives better. You know what I'm saying? So when I see her coming on, and I see certain people who are behind her, and yet those people have a history. They have a history. The same thing that I've been saying, the same thing about this sheepdog pack. Why they don't want Michelle Tafoya is different of my reasonings for not wanting to Michelle Tafoya. Right? What did Malcolm X? And that's how I know that a lot of Republicans in the GOP, they never listened to Malcolm X, the Ballot and the Bullet, and especially when it came to entertainers, celebrities. So why am I going to believe anything that Michelle Tafoya says? Come on. I mean, we're not that stupid. We're not that dumb. It's the same thing that I've seen with Cicely Davis. That's why I don't think if Ilhan Omar is going to lose, it's going to be another Democrat that beats her. It's not going to be a Republican. It's going to be somebody in her own party. That's somebody in her own party that is probably more extremist than she is. So that's what it really comes down to, is that people will see that Ilhan is the worst of the two. So they're gonna go with the other lady. I don't know much about. I know that she was a PO, LaTanya Reeves or whatever, and she's along on the police shit. But and even the Plaguey Flanagan, I'm not just gonna jump behind somebody because then the other person is gonna win. Come on, man, that's stupid. That to me is dumb as hell. And it's because they want us to get behind a lady. That's why we'll get Peggy Flanagan, is because they keep on putting up shitty ass candidates. Like, what do you expect? Like, I don't even understand this shit. Like, they put people up in front of us who we don't agree with politically, ideology, none of that shit. We don't agree. So why am I going to vote for Michelle Tafoya when she doesn't give a fuck about Minneapolis? She doesn't give a fuck about Minneapolis. She doesn't give a fuck about what's going on in the insides of there. That's why when I see these little BPOU meetings and all this other bullshit, I just don't get it. And then it's the same thing I was asked a question about. Why wouldn't I vote for Royce just because of Mike? Because if Royce, this is what I want to say. Obviously, you can tell that Royce he's not a street nigga. And I'm going to say that. He's not a street dude. He's not a street dude. So he's not going to see what I see in Mike Lindell. Royce has never sold drugs. Royce ain't never been no fucking dope dealer. Royce has been and nothing against him. I liked Royce coming up when he played basketball. I voted for him 2024. But I'm not going to vote for somebody that is endorsing or even doing events with a crackhead. And I say a crackhead, he might not be using crack anymore, but those same still behaviors this nigga's had over the years. And first of all, I'm not going to put somebody up there that can't manage money right. That can't manage money right. And yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that. I'll just talk about the drugs, because that's what I know of Mike Lindell. And he was the pillow guy. So he's selling his book He bought his book to give out to voters. Paid himself. That's another reason why I can't fuck with Mike Lindell. Like, instead of you trying to supply your own campaign, self-sufficiency, you want people to donate to your campaign. You take those donations to buy your book and then to pay yourself. That's not, that, to me, that's wrong. That's ethically wrong. That's morally wrong. And if you're okay with that, that shows that you don't really care about the change in Minnesota. You're okay with the same regular ass shit every day. It doesn't matter to you. So yeah, I don't. There's so much confusion when it comes into. I mean, I like Rebecca Whitney. I like her a lot. I gotta agree with her. All of our Republican candidates are as non-libertarian as you can get too. So there's that. I definitely do agree with that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so much fucked up ass shit in Minnesota that, people think that you voting another way instead of their candidate is going to get somebody else in. No, it's not. I don't believe that. I believe that even when it comes down to Philip Harris, I was talking to somebody yesterday and I was kind of like, when I seen the numbers come out of like the first quarter and, Philip Harris was at the bottom. And I wish I wish I knew people that had money. I don't. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a rich person. I'm not, I barely make it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and the people I know are just as poor. So it's like, I can only do so much. I don't know a millionaire whose ear I got. I don't have an investor. I don't have, I wish I did. You know what I'm saying? I really wish I did. I wish I had people that believed in mutual aid. I wish I had rich friends that believed in doing the right thing. I don't really have those. And that's okay. I have what I thought was friends, family, when I got out the couch, when it came to George Floyd. But then I only seen that a lot of people lie. A lot of people said they loved you, but that's why I liked about J-Mo, rest in peace, man. That it was a hard weekend. Yesterday, his family came out and said that J-Mo had passed away. And I know he had colon cancer, and I didn't know how bad it was. And it was, but J-Mo was one of them people that I really fuck with J-Mo. I really did fuck with J-Mo. And I was reading through our messages yesterday, and he was one of them that he lost people that he thought cared for him because he stuck up for me. So people looked at him like he was the bad guy. Looked at him like he was the bad guy. And he wasn't. He wasn't. He wasn't. J-Mo was a really good dude. He just, and I get it, you know what I'm saying? But he still was a good dude. And that's why I think a lot of the people on the other side are, we're on opposite sides of the fence. I'm not going to call him a socialist or a DFL or BLM or any of that. This was a man that wanted to see change. I mean, JMO was there for everybody. Everybody. And that's one thing that I will remember about him is that he tried to be a uniter, tried to bring people close together. And that's what Mel Reeves, rest in peace, he tried to bring people together. He wanted to talk about the things that people didn't want to talk about in our community. The traumas, the harms that a lot of our churches, a lot of our so-called leaders were leaving in our own communities, and we're not even recovering from that. And then something always else happens. When is it going to be that we can heal? Where is it that we're going to be okay? That we can just stop fighting and sit down and enjoy the sacrifices of this tears, blood, and sweat. Like, I just don't get it, man. I really don't get it no more. And maybe that's just the way that it is and the way that it will always be. Does that make it right? No. But it is what it is, I guess. And you can't change the shit. What are you supposed to do about it? That's just like the Serenity prayer says. I don't remember. Let me see the whole. I forget what the whole thing is. Serenity. God grant me the serenity. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, is the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as he did the sinful word as it is, not as I would have, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. I know that's from like AA or whatever, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, but that is really something to think about. That is something that, you can have people ask God for a lot. Some people ask, is the minimum. God grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think that's what everybody who calls himself an activist, who is something that they need to ponder, they need to have in their mind, because you're not going to be able to change everything. I look at in the last 6 years, what have I done? People ask me that all the time. I authored a resolution in Red Wing proclaiming racism a public health crisis. I helped with rental license. You got to have a rental license to rent now on Red Wing. I even with the Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan. I mean, but did that really change anything? Did that make anybody's life better? No, because those words were just words. There wasn't no teeth. There wasn't no bite there. And because I was still gullible, because I still believe that DFL, like Evan or, some other people on the DFL side would back up what they were saying to me. They back up their word, but that ain't how it came out. They wanted to be they were allies because they only told all lies. That's the only reason why they were an ally, is because all they told was just all lies. And I still, from even talking to the city council, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. So I get it. If you have a plan that prospers, or to better people's lives, that doesn't help them, because the only thing that they care about is if the city is going to make money off of it. And I get it. I really wholesomely, I do get it. I do understand it too. Maybe not all the way, but I do understand to some degree that if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. I get that. I don't think you really need to get anything else. You just know that money walks and bullshit talks. And is that going to be us? Are we going to be the walkers? We're going to be the talkers. And that's the one thing that I will never understand either, is I get it. It does take money to be able to do a lot of this shit, but it shouldn't. The right thing should be right. Just because it's the right thing, you don't need to get no money behind it. So I'm gonna get up out of here till tomorrow. I'll see y'all later. Same time, same place. And here is Don Tripp with Selfish, and I will see y'all tomorrow.
Yeah, I want y'all to myself. I want y'all to myself. I want y'all to I want y'all to myself. Yeah, I don't want to share. No, I know it's selfish of me to ask. Forever don't ever last, but I don't really care. I want y'all to myself. Fuck everyone else. They don't fucking deserve you. Let them fend for theyself. I know it sounds selfish. I know it ain't fair, but oh well. Just make sure you bring your cat for show and tell. Who better for you than me? Not a living soul. We can travel the globe till there's nowhere left to go. It's just me and you. X-ray vision, we gon' see it through. Man of my word, in case you needed proof. Darling, ain't no moving on. Right here where you standing is where you belong. Got so much class, you need a student loan. Only thing left for us to do